Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to our webinar today. As you come in, please let us know where you're joining us. You can just go ahead and type where you're at in the chat. Hello, we're so excited for our webinar today. As you come in, just let us know where you're joining us from today. You can type that in the chat and we'll go ahead and get started in a couple minutes. We're really excited today to have a robust panel of incredible experts to discuss resources and advice on supporting young people during transitions from high school to college and from college to the workforce. So as you come in, just let us know where you're coming from and we'll get started in a minute or so. We have people coming in from Honolulu, West Palm Beach, Florida, Tucson, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Washington, Massachusetts, so from all over. Welcome everyone. We're really excited for what we have for you today. All right, we can go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us today. We're really excited to introduce our panelists and have a discussion of the resources that we have and incredible advice for supporting young people during transitions from high school to college and from college to the workforce, so mentoring through the ages. Before we begin, I'd just like to give a little introduction. So I am a recent graduate of Duke University. I studied neuroscience and history, and I've spent years as a peer mentor through programs in my high school and my university. And I've been working with Mentor through the National Mentoring Resource Center's Youth Advisory Council for about a year. And I've been continuing to make peer mentoring resources more equitable. First off, I just want to share some housekeeping information for today's webinar. All attendees have been muted for the best sound. However, we want to make this a participatory experience. So please use the Q&A button in the control panel at the bottom of the screen to ask any questions to our panelists throughout the webinar. There are also live captions available by clicking on the CC live transcript button at the bottom of your screen, which is right next to the Q&A button. You can feel free to use the chat throughout our webinar, but if you do have any questions for the panelists, please use the Q&A button to make sure we raise those up during our Q&A portion. We will be queuing up those questions. We might not get to all of them because there are a lot of people joining us today, but we will do our best. The questions that we share with our panelists are generally ones that broaden or deepen the conversation. So if we're unable to get your question today, please feel free to reach out to us here at Mentor, and we'll do our best to direct your question and get it answered. So we welcome everyone and we hope that today's information will be applicable to everyone here. So please note that today's webinar is being recorded, and in about a week, all attendees will receive an email with a copy of these slides and a link to the webinar recording. These materials will also be posted on the OJJDP NMRC website. And to continually improve our webinars from the OJJDP NMRC, we're looking for your input. So a short survey will pop up as you exit the webinar. Please take 3 minutes to give us some of your feedback. Here's a brief overview of our plans for today. We'll be sharing some key recommendations with all of you from research we've done, as well as from materials that are available on the NMRC. We'll be having an in-depth discussion with mentors and program staff to get their input and insights into these key transitions. And we will then be turning to your questions as time allows. We'll send you off with more resources, and we will follow up with a recording of this webinar within a week. The National Mentoring Resource Center is funded by OJJDP, the Office of Justice Programs, and the U.S. Department of Justice. The NMRC builds on OJJDP's history with leadership and investments in quality youth mentoring. The NMRC, or National Mentoring Resource Center, is an online, free, and public library that houses research, webinars, a blog, manuals, and many more resources for mentoring programs across the country. It's funded by OJJDP. Through the NMRC, we offer about 10 of these webinars every year on a range of topics related to mentoring. We are always seeking ideas and requests for topics you all are needing more resources for, so please reach out and let us know. We have a research board, and we offer no-cost technical assistance to youth mentoring programs countrywide. So we'll share more info on how to apply for that at the end of our call today. Mentor supports the best of youth mentoring across the country. We have 24 state and local affiliates that support mentoring programs in their area through technical assistance, resource support, and program development and design. We really work to foster and support an entire network of mentoring programs that support young people and close the opportunity gaps as youth transition to adulthood. We'd love to get to know more about you, so please let us know. We're going to launch a poll, and you can answer these questions as the poll comes up. What is your role in mentoring? Are you a staff, mentor, mentee? And are you currently mentoring young people through major transitions? So please just take some time to fill out that poll, and we'll get a chance to see who else is in the room with us. Do we have the results of the poll? Okay, so about 41% of you are mentoring people out of high school, 11% out of college, 24% in another big transition not listed, some not currently, and some not mentoring at all. The majority of you here are program staff, 69%, 32% are mentors, a few mentees, a few funders, and some researchers. So that's really cool that we have this diverse pool of people with us today. Hopefully we have good information for everyone here. We know how important mentoring can be for young people transitioning from high school and transitioning from college. Young people with mentors report setting higher educational goals for themselves and are more likely to attend college, those without mentors. Mentors often create a spark inside young people that helps them realize what they can accomplish and allows them to set high goals. And then also, given the ratio of guidance counselors in schools, having a mentor can guide them into selecting academic courses and even selecting school choices on a more personalized level that students can really rely on. There are over 5,000 colleges and universities in the United States, so this task of school choice can often be really daunting for students, especially if they're coming from a background in which they haven't their family hasn't gone to school or made this transition. So having a mentor can really be really awesome for a student in guiding them and helping them choose a college that helps them achieve their goals. Mentors can also help coach youth or help them explore their different goals through effective research and study skills that can positively impact their academic performance. So that's what we'll be tapping into today. I'm also happy to introduce our co-moderators for today, which are my fellow members of the NMRC Youth Advisory Council. So the Youth Advisory Council was formed in spring in 2021. So we're a newer group, but we're doing really big things. It's composed of young leaders who identifies youth mentors and peer mentors, and we convene to provide thought leadership and guidance on ways to center and elevate youth voices and the mentee experience on the NMRC. So today I'm happy to introduce Kamal, who is a fellow member of the council. He's a sophomore at the University of Louisville studying biology, public health, and Spanish. He plans on pursuing medicine in the future, specifically hoping to work in the oncology field. After serving as both a mentor through College Mentors for Kids and a mentee this past year, he has seen both sides of the mentoring relationship and appreciates its benefits. As a recent addition to the NMRC's Youth Advisory Council, he's excited to serve as an advocate for mentoring to connect programs with valuable mentoring resources. So welcome, Kamal. And we also have Kendall with us today. Kendall is a full-time student, writer, mentoring advocate, and aspiring lawyer from Covington, Kentucky. After being a mentee for 4 years, she served as a board member for her local mentoring program, Covington Partners, to help ensure that a student's perspective was shown in all mentoring related decisions. Now she's a sophomore at the University of Louisville. She pursues a degree centered around restorative justice and peace studies. So Kendall has worked with Mentor National as well as NMRC on the youth advocacy and establishing one of the first official peer mentoring guides with us. So welcome, Kendall. So happy to have you both here. And now Kendall is going to share some recommendations from our research on the transition out of high school.
Yes, hello everyone. It is so exciting to see all of you in the chat. It's kind of crazy. There's 156 people here. And a lot of you said that you were mentoring someone who is transitioning out of high school. So hopefully these facts can be helpful for you. So our first quick little recommendation that we have is to lengthen the mentor-mentee relationship. And as we see on the resource on the slide, it says, students who were mentored throughout the summer had a greater chance of actually being enrolled in college. And we see this with a lot of mentoring. Mentoring in general really increases a student's well-being as well as their academic success. And I want to stress that, like, I know this isn't super feasible for everyone. Sometimes it's hard to get parental consent to be able to see your mentee throughout the summer. Sometimes it's hard to find a comfortable place to meet or to have some way of communication. But we really stress that if you're able to, this is an extremely important, not only to the mentee's academic success and just success for their future, but it's always just a good way to strengthen the bond between you and your mentee. And so for our second recommendation, this is one of the more tedious ones, but it's extremely important nonetheless. And we talk about how mentors can really play a vital role in helping mentees create, whether it be a physical or a digital file of awards, report cards, honors, community activities, anything that could look good when applying for college, because I'm a sophomore, I'm entering my sophomore year of college, and I vividly remember the horror stories of trying to collect things from my freshman, sophomore year of high school when applying, and it's just a nightmare. It's really confusing, and sometimes it makes you just want to give up. So if you have those resources just together where you can quickly access them, that is just super awesome, makes everything a lot easier and more helpful. And also as a mentor, it's super awesome to just help your mentee assess their student portfolio. And, you know, making sure that they have those extracurriculars written down, and just helping them kind of present the best version of themselves to those college recruiters or to those people that you're applying for a scholarship for, just all of those people who see, you know, they have these titles, you're really scared, you want to look really cool. So mentors can really play a super awesome role in helping the mentee advocate for themselves by making sure that their portfolio is as polished and is as nice as it could be. Our third recommendation is my least favorite, but we have to do it. It's a thing that most high schoolers have to do, and that is standardized testing. A lot of colleges are opting to be test optional now, but it is always good to make sure that those tests are being taken and also taken seriously. And one step to really kind of maximize your success on these tests is to make sure you're prepared. And that is by making sure you know the dates, because standardized testing, they're always in different dates. They're usually like every couple months. You can schedule one. And it is important to know that these cost money, but they're super important it's super important to take your standardized test if you are able to at least more than one time, just so you can get that super score, and make sure, again, you're able to help your mentee present the very best version of themselves as they can. And the second thing is to help the mentee file their FAFSA. This was another personal nightmare for me, just because it is paperwork and it talks a lot about income. And a lot of the times you have to get your parent to help you file your FAFSA, which can sometimes be a little bit difficult, especially if you are a first generation college student, just because these are forms that most people, if you didn't go to college, you're not necessarily seeing. And it is super easy to make mistakes on the FAFSA and sort of misinterpret the language. So as a mentee, as a mentor, just making sure your mentee is knowledgeable on the FAFSA, knows what to expect, and sort of knows what to communicate to their parents. So everybody is sort of has a basic understanding of what this form is. It can really be a lifesaver. And at the end of the day, it could really save your mentee thousands upon thousands of dollars in college. And any money you can get is good money, especially if it's grant money. Alrighty, so one of our most important recommendations that we have is to help your mentee explore college campuses. And this can be a really fun and awesome bonding activity as well, taking a little road trip around, whether it be a college campus that is close by or one that maybe is a couple states away. And this also really helps your mentee sort of garner a perspective on, what they might want their college campus to look like, what programs are available at different colleges, whether they are interested in a bigger school or a smaller school. So all of those factors are really important and can be addressed via a visit. So I think mentors can really kind of fill in a role, maybe one day out of the weekend, just take a little road trip up to a college and take a tour, whether it be self-guided or if the university offers, and just find out what the mentee might like. This is another super, super important sort of recommendation, and that is to help your mentee build a partnership. This one can be a little bit daunting, just because when you interact with staff compared to a high school, to a college, I don't know, it just feels a lot more serious, and like you have to have a lot more, I guess, professionalism. So really helping your mentee sort of ground themselves and, kind of explore the different people that are available on a college campus, because there are hundreds of staff members on each campus who are able to fill different roles. So whether that be academic counselors or program leaders or even leaders of student organizations, by connecting with those people, it's able to really help your mentee sort of feel more comfortable in their college environment, feel like they have a place already, because that can be a little hard, especially if you are attending a bigger school where everyone just seems to sort of blend in. So really building these connections can help your mentee, one, feel a lot more comfortable, and two, if they might have like a problem that arises on campus, they already have somebody that they can contact. Alrighty, so as I mentioned before, it can be a little bit difficult to find a college that is the best fit for your mentee. And it is super important to stress that to your mentee, that sometimes your dream school is not the right choice for you. Like I said, there's so many different factors that contribute to your general well-being when attending college, whether that be classroom size, whether that be the amount of greenery you like on campus, whether it be the programs provided. Some schools are more geared towards STEM, while others are geared more towards like liberal arts and have better programs towards that subject. So it is super important to help your mentee explore those things, because again, there's so many colleges in the United States, and it is so easy to be overwhelmed, and it is so easy for them to sort of blend together, and you're just like, I just want to pick one, whatever, I don't care. But it's super important to consider these factors because, again, it's not only better for the mentee's academic life, but social life as well. This is another thing that me, as well as a lot of my peers, have struggled with, and that is financial literacy. Money is probably one of the scariest topics that you can throw towards a college student. As a college student myself, it is really daunting. Money management, knowing what you should be spending your money on, what you should be saving, if you should be getting a job on campus, where jobs on campus are located. So I think mentors can really help ease a lot of the tension just by giving them just basic financial literacy tips like, hey, you might want to open a savings account. Do you have your own bank account? What steps can we take to do that for you? And also, a really big thing is college, or around the college time is when a lot of young people are buying their first apartments, which can be really scary. I'm currently in the process of doing it myself. So mentors can really kind of serve as that helping hand. Most likely mentors have already had the experience of renting or doing some sort of living situation other than, dorms. So yes, it's just super awesome for mentors to be able to fill that role and make sure mentees are knowledgeable. And I think this is one of our last recommendations. It's always important to talk about shared experiences. And I think mentors, especially if you've been to college, you can really help ease some anxieties that come with transitioning, because it's a huge transition. It's a whole completely different stage of life. So I think by mentors sharing some of their experiences, whether it be silly stories or, sometimes even like the professor horror stories, even though some of it might sound really different, maybe even scary to your mentee, I think it's really awesome and sort of giving them this perspective and sort of, they know what to present. And I think one last little important tidbit is to remember to present all options of higher education to your mentees. Sometimes I know it's often presented that, straight out of high school, you go into a four-year institution, but sometimes that is just not going to be what's best for your mentee. Sometimes it's really important to take a gap year. Sometimes you might want to look at a two-year institution, see if that might be a better fit, or even a vocation school. So make sure your mentee knows that they have those options, and to also maybe quell any of the stigmas that surround those other institutions, because as long as your mentee is happy with where they're going, nothing else really matters, and they can sort of be the most successful version of themselves that they can. Alrighty, so now I'm going to transition it over to my colleague Kamal, and he's going to talk to you guys about transitioning out of college.
Hi everyone, my name is Kamal Amrnani, and as Kendall just mentioned, I'm going to be highlighting some of our research and recommendations for the transition out of college, either into the workforce or pursuing higher education. So to begin, career mentoring is essential when making that transition. It allows the mentees to develop their own brand identity and market themselves better towards employers or graduate schools that they may be applying to. So whether it be through getting feedback on resumes or being told which skills to develop or attend training for, there able to create a better skill set for themselves in order to have higher rates of success when applying to graduate schools or applying for jobs. And also their mentors can be someone within the field. And in that case, they'll have a lot more insider knowledge about the current trends that they might be seeing in terms of employment. So that will allow the mentees to be able to get a better idea of expectations of what they should expect when applying for jobs so that they don't set their expectations too low or too high. In addition, it allows them to understand the unspoken rules and culture of the workplace. Hearing it directly from someone who is in that environment, which the mentor will be, is really beneficial for the mentees instead of just being thrown into that new workplace or that new graduate school. They'll hear stories about it and know what to expect so that they don't break any unspoken rules. And it's also really important for mentors to talk through their exact career path, detailing the decisions, people, and experiences that they had along the way. Even the smallest decisions might have had a huge impact on where the mentor ended up. So it's really important for the mentee to hear these decisions so that they can learn lessons from them and just know one path that is in their future that they could take. And they don't have to follow that same path that their mentor took, but it's just nice knowing that that is one possible route that I can take and I can split off from it however I see fit. And so one specific instance where hearing from mentors about their experiences can be really beneficial is when preparing for interviews, whether it be job interviews or graduate school interviews. Because for most people, including myself, I know that is the most stressful part of applying somewhere. I always psych myself out before interviews. So if I were to have a mentor that is able to talk me through the process, give me tips and tricks, especially when it's specific to the field that I'm wanting to go into, and maybe even do a mock interview with the mentee, that can be greatly beneficial to increase their chance of success. And so a study that was conducted across various liberal arts schools in Canada demonstrated that undergrad students who are mentored during their junior and senior years of college had a dramatic increase in their job search self-efficacy compared to students who weren't part of that program. So this research just highlights how important that career mentoring can have in that final stage of an undergrad student's career. In addition, they're able to seek out jobs to a greater extent. I also wanted to highlight how mentoring during the career or graduate school transition is very dependent on establishing a relationship of trust between both parties. So even the smallest things like eating a meal with someone or talking about general life advice that may not seem directly relevant to applying for a job or applying for graduate school, those can go a long way when it comes to developing that relationship of trust in the first place. And a really good way that I like to think about it is that a relationship based on friendship and trust lays that foundation that's really necessary for the professional relationship to then flourish so that the mentee can get the most out of it. And finally, this is our last recommendation for today. And although the traditional mentoring structure typically involves one mentor and one mentee, it's really important that as a mentor, they learn to recognize when they're not able to provide the mentee with all the resources or advice that they need. So a sign of a strong mentor is recognizing that they might not be able to provide all of that to their mentee and to be willing to connect their mentee with other faculty or professionals who can further the mentee's career goals.
Thank you so much, Kamal and Kendall. That was really insightful. Now we'd like to apply our research to this conversation. We are so excited to be joined by College Access and Student Success, Covington Partners, and Success Boston. So first, joining us from Boston Private Industry Council and Success Boston, we'd like to welcome Zainab Salajwala. She is a post-secondary career coach at Boston Private Industry Council, where she supports students at Bunker Hill Community College. She received her master's degree in critical, ethnic, and community studies and her Bachelor of Arts in psychology at UMass Boston. Zainab is passionate about helping marginalized students to succeed within higher education, whether through mentoring, teaching, and/or research. During the time she is not dismantling systems of oppression, she is learning how to ride a penny board, drawing cartoons, or photographing the people she loves. So welcome, Zainab. We're so happy to have you here with us. Next, from Boston University College Access and Student Success, we'd like to welcome Claire Fitzgerald. She is the undergraduate program manager for College Access and Student Success, which is housed in Boston University's Wheelock College of Education and Human Development. She supports over 500 undergraduates across the university schools and colleges. Claire manages support for CAS's undergraduate partnerships with the mentoring component, with the aim to improve educational outcomes for students traditionally underserved by U.S. higher education. Her responsibilities include recruiting, training, matching, and retaining mentors for such initiatives as the Boston Public Schools, Community Scholars, Yes Prep, Impact Scholars, and many other programs. She also provides programming for these students, highlighting high impact practices known to improve success during and after college. So welcome, Claire. We're so happy to have you with us today. And last but not least, from Covington Partners, we'd like to welcome Debbie Canatella. She offered a nonprofit for at-risk crisis teenagers in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and was the director for the program for 10 years. After moving to the greater Cincinnati area, she got involved in Covington Partners in Northern Kentucky and has been mentoring through that program for 4 years. She is the wife of the president of Gateway Community College, where she is active in supporting higher education. She serves as vice president of the board of Holly Hill Child and Family Solutions and is a full-time artist at Canatella Studio, where she works in oil, watercolor, clay, assemblage, enameling, metal smithing, and textiles. Welcome, Debbie. We're so happy to have you here today. We're excited to get started with our conversation.
Yes, so I believe it is me who's starting off with the questions. So our first question is for Zainab as well as Debbie, so whichever one of you feel most comfortable answering first. And that is, as mentors, how did you establish a foundation of mutual trust with your mentee?
I can go first if Zainab doesn't mind.
Yep, that's fine.
When I first met my mentee, she was 12. I've been her mentor for 4 years now. An introvert and surrounded by invisible walls. Trying to get inner information beyond one-word answers was nearly impossible. We spent the first 18 months, I think, playing cards and board games. And I would particularly ask questions about what's going on in her life, and I'd get nothing. So 18 months into our relationship, her family wound up leaving home due to domestic violence. She told me about it, didn't offer me any details. So I shared with her my story of domestic violence and what that felt like for me in my first marriage when I was right out of high school. How it affected my self-value, how I healed from that. It was a turning point, I would say, in our relationship. A foundation of mutual trust, I think, hinges on showing up, no matter how hard it is. And even if you aren't getting anything out of it as a mentor, believe me, it was like pulling teeth trying to get anything from her. It's important to be honest about who you are, I think, and share your story. How can they expect to trust you if you keep your life a secret? And above all, listen without judgment and accept them where they are, no matter how shocking the stories may be. Because believe me, they will tell you stories just to get a reaction. So I'll turn that over to our next panelist.
Thanks for sharing that, Debbie. I definitely agree with you in the sense of like, sometimes it does feel like pulling teeth, with our mentees. And I know that today we have a diverse group of people on this call from all over. And so in the context of my mentorship, I'm specifically a career coach. And so I coach students in the post-secondary realm. And I think, similar to Debbie, it takes time to build trust with your mentee. And, similar to what Debbie does, I think I share parts of myself, and I'm very transparent with my own experiences, my sociocultural identities, through the organization that I work for. Our student populations are mostly students who are marginalized. And so given that I can identify with the students I work with, like I tell them, what college I went to, or like what that process was like as a first generation student. And just being able to be open and honest. And, I think that there's value in creating that relationship with our students, or our mentees.
Thank you so much, you two. That was really awesome. And Jill in the chat here said vulnerability and listening without judgment are key. And I think that are the two main points that the both of you are trying to establish. And I know as a mentee, I was not telling my mentor anything. I was like, if I know nothing about you, it'll be the same way, So like you said, it's just super vital to be vulnerable. So thank you both so much. And I believe our next question will be for Debbie. And this question is, how do you prepare your high school students for the transition to college? And what are some of the obstacles that make it difficult during that transition? I believe your mic is off.
Thanks for catching that. I personally never attended college. I got married at 18, right out of high school, the first time around. And I attended college as an adult a little bit, but only a few classes. I'm fortunate now to be married to a community college president. So I have a pipeline of where to go to get any of my questions answered about that. My mentee is an athlete. And she's interested in attending college and running track and field at my hometown college of LSU. So last year I went on a road trip back home to visit my daughter and grandchildren, my parents. My whole family is still living in Baton Rouge, and she came with me. We toured the college. We went to the athletic department, spoke to a woman's track coach there, and she gave us information on how to register for the National Athletic Association, so that her name would be on the interest list of high school students to keep a watch on. She will be going into her junior year next year, or this fall, I should say. She and her mom got together after that trip and filled out all the information online. She's a pretty good student. So thankfully we don't have grades as an issue, and she's very conscientious, really concerned if any of her grades drop below a B. So that realm makes it much easier for me. But I am arming myself on next year's schedule of college placement tests and plan to keep reminding her to take as many as she can, because I agree. I took an ACT once. I got a low score. I was not interested in going to college. I was engaged at 17, and it's embarrassing today to say my ACT score was 13, right? So I've got to encourage my mentee to take her college placement test as often as she can to try to get the highest score she can get. So I'm gonna turn that over to the next question. That's kind of all I have for now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Debbie. And it's so awesome that you and your mentor and your mentee have a relationship in which you can take those road trips together. That sounds like so much fun. And again, it's super awesome that you're helping her with that paperwork, because that can be at least for me, it was one of the biggest obstacles. So now I think I'm turning it over to Kamal to ask some questions.
So this next question is going to be for Zainab, who is currently mentoring a student from a community college who hopes to enter a four-year university. So my question for you is, what specifically are you doing as a mentor to prepare your mentee for that transition?
Yeah, definitely, I think there, because my student is already at a community college, she has 2 years under her belt, right? And so it's not like this is going to be a totally new process for her. But at the same time, we do know that four-year colleges are also a little bit different. And I don't want her going into this process blind or by herself. And I think I really do talk to her about backwards planning. And so starting off with, what schools do you want to go to? And in the beginning of this webinar, Kendall, I think you touched on the points of like going to campus tours, right? That's super important. A school might look super nice on a website or on a pamphlet, but it might be a different feel when you're actually on the campus. And given that we are, in a pandemic, there are so many schools that have changed to like have the option of doing virtual tours. So I encourage my student that, during the summer, you might want to go check out some schools, right? And talk to admissions counselors. Specifically at Bunker Hill Community College, where I coach, we have a lot of resources for students who are transferring, including virtual advisors or virtual admissions people who come and talk to our students. So reminding her to kind of utilize all the resources that are being provided to her. And then also talking about like some of the differences that they might see at a four-year college, including policies and procedures. Universities may have more resources and things that she didn't have access to at a two-year community college. And so reminding her that, you're going to have to advocate for yourself and to have agency and be proactive in making sure that you're successful and all of your needs are being met. And that, it's when you transfer and you talk about that process, it's like a part-time job. And she's the one that's going to be driving the bus, and I'll be here every bump in the road or whatever she needs. But at the end of the day, she's going to be the one, writing her essay, even if I can help with that, or doing her applications, just as she would, or just as she did when she, applied to the 2-year. So those are kind of the things that we help with.
Thank you so much for that response. I think it's really great how you can recognize that although your role as a mentor is to push them and drive them forward into achieving their dreams for career or education wise, it's ultimately up to them to take that next step and to write those essays, as you say.
Yeah, and just to add to that, like I know in the beginning, like Kendall also mentioned, like your dream school might not be your dream school, right? And that's something I also told my student or my mentee is that like I didn't apply to my dream school, which was Northeastern, because I did not have the SAT scores, I did not have the GPA, and just being honest with like, is it worth applying? It might be, right? But also taking into consideration the aspect of different factors and like making sure you're going to have all the support you need on your new school, as well as the financial aspect. I think that's also a critical conversation we should have with our mentees.
I totally agree with that. I know that when I was applying 2 years ago, I obviously wanted to shoot high, but you also have to be realistic with yourself and see what factors and what's the best fit for you. So our next question is also going to be for Zainab. And now that we talked about how you specifically advise your mentee about pursuing higher education, in general, how do you even make that decision in the first place, whether to directly join the workforce after a 2-year institution or continue on to a 4-year?
That's a great question. A lot of the students that I work with and coach and mentor, because they're at a community college, we do see maybe around 30% who go directly into the workforce, and then a big chunk of them want to transfer. And then we also see a good amount of our students who stop out, right? And so we do have that breadth and that diversity. And I think when I first meet with a new student, I ask them like, what are your plans, right? What are your academic and career plans? And we get that conversation started really early, just because it does take some planning. And if a student tells me that they would like to go directly into the workforce after their associate's degree, I'm like, okay, that's great, right? And starting the process of understanding that the transition from a 2-year to the workforce is also a transition, right? It's a process. And to give yourself some space to be compassionate with yourself, because you're probably going to have a range of emotions. In school, your teachers will kind of follow you up for assignments. In the workforce, your boss may not, remind you to do your tasks or the projects that you're working on. They might just want to see the products and the end results. And so having the conversation really around social capital, and understanding the unwritten rules of the workplace, especially for our students who are coming from marginalized backgrounds, and helping them specifically with if they've never done a resume, we got to start working on your resume. If you don't have references, we got to work on getting some references, right? That's a huge one, especially in the pandemic, because I guess it's easier to make connections in person. But with remote learning, a lot of my students tell me like, I don't even talk to my professor, right? I see them on Zoom and then like I go home or I'm already in my house, but then I leave. And so just like having the conversation of like, okay, well, how can you meet your professor during office hours if you want them to be a reference for you, right? How can you build that relationship with them, because they do have connections to the jobs that you might want, right? And so it's a lot of coaching, as well as just helping students understand their own interest, and as well as like I see with my marginalized students, like my parents want me to do this, but I want to do this, right? Is there a way that we can compromise? Or, do you really have to have a tough conversation with your parent too, right? So just a lot of different moving parts for sure.
Yeah, thank you so much. I had not even considered how COVID would impact how you as a mentor would have to change your advice and how you direct your mentees. Because for me, like I wouldn't say I was close with my professors because of online school. And that's something that's really important when trying to get references for a job. And like you said, if you're trying to directly enter the workforce, and those in-person experiences or internships to kind of understand the work culture, these students in the past 2 years have really been missing out on those. So it's important as mentors to also adapt to COVID. So now our next question is going to be for Claire, who has experience in recruiting, training, matching, and retaining mentors. So how do you prepare mentors to be paired for students who transferred from these 2-year institutions and support them through that transition?
This is such a great question, because sometimes I think transfer students, even if the institution doesn't treat them as a forgotten population, they may see themselves as kind of forgotten because, you transfer and you're already a sophomore, maybe you're already a junior. So you didn't have that like freshman experience that so many people associate with undergraduate life at whatever college or university you end up completing your degree at. So I always tell my mentors that transfer students are very unique because on the one hand, they've done college somewhere, they've gone to a previous institution. So they are aware that there are some resources out there available to them. They know, for example, that a college may have a tutoring center. They may know that a college may have a career center. But on the flip side, because they're at a new place, they may not know what these places at the new institution are called. Universities love acronyms. And so everyone has a very slightly different variety of what they call things and how things are talked about on campus. So the mentor can often translate for the transfer student, okay, this is where you go to get tutoring support. This is where you go to work on your time management. These are the people you talk to about working on your resume or connecting to alumni who work in the field that you're interested in. And mentors also need to realize that just because a student has had a couple of years of undergraduate study under their belt, this may be a whole new ballgame for them. Many students transfer because they want a little bit more academic rigor as they complete their degree. So getting used to a new academic life may be challenging for them. So mentors shouldn't assume necessarily that the student knows what they're doing just because they transferred in from somewhere else. And then finally, just kind of this really goes into the granular level, but just checking in with students about their credits and what they need to graduate, because students come in with certain credits, a certain number, a certain types of classes that they have already completed. They want to make crystal clear that, these credits count towards their degree, towards their graduation requirements. Every school has a different way of going about their general education, as well as their major requirements. And I've known more than one student who comes in, assumes, oh, this particular class at my old institution is going to count for this. And then they get to November of what would be their final year of university and come to find out, oh no, sorry, you actually needed to take this very specific class at this specific institution. And then it's oh no, do I take an extra class in the spring? What if it's not offered? Do I need to take it the summer after I was supposed to graduate? So just having those conversations early, and making sure that they're connecting to their academic advisors too is just so important to make sure that the students can complete their degree in the time that they are hoping to do so.
Yeah, being in that final graduating year and just not having a credit, that is heart-wrenching.
It is.
I can't even imagine. So our next question is going to be for you as well, Claire. What is some of the feedback that you've received from mentors who are supporting students through the transition to the graduate school or the workforce?
This is another great question, because I know our mentors really want to start that conversation early, even as early as the student's first year of undergraduate. We have a lot of mentors ask us, how can my student find summer work? How can my student find a paid internship? Like I said in my introduction, the vast majority of students who I work with are from underrepresented backgrounds. So many of them are low income. They can't afford to take an unpaid internship over the summer. They need to get paid work. So, mentors ask us, what are the types of things that my student can do that they can use to build their resume that then they can also, turn around and get remunerated for, because their labor is valuable and they need to learn that early on. Mentors also, we do a lot of surveys because we want to make sure we're serving our mentors and serving our students correctly. And one thing mentors suggested was, what else can they be doing as a student goes into their sophomore year, their junior year, when they're starting to think about the next steps after graduation from undergraduate. So we do a lot of events for our mentors, and we make sure that we connect them to our on-campus resources for students. So we ask folks from our Center for Career Development come talk about all the resources they have around building a resume, networking, what to do when you are getting ready for a career fair, that kind of thing. And Boston University is so big that in addition to all of our undergraduate schools and colleges, we have a bunch of graduate schools and colleges. And we love when students stay at BU to get a graduate degree. So we bring folks from the graduate schools in to talk to our mentors about their programs. So if a mentor is talking to a student and the student is like, well, you know, throughout the pandemic, like this thing, public health has been thrown around. It sounds really interesting to me, but I don't know how to pursue it as a career. Boston University has a school of public health. So the mentor can, you know, turn around and connect them to somebody there to start talking to those folks. And even if the student doesn't end up at that particular college, at least they know, okay, well, there are people out there in the world who do this sort of thing, and this is how I can like make those next steps in my career.
That is great advice. Facilitating those connections as a mentor to your mentee can really be super beneficial. And another question for you, Claire, is what specific tools do you give your mentors to support youth through their first and last year of college, and how do those tools differ between those different time periods?
Yeah, so I kind of broke this up into like 3 different buckets, because there are ways that we support all of our students, and then there are specific things for first years and for final years. And actually, one thing that you were talking about earlier, Kamal, really stood out to me, is for mentors to share their own journeys early on. I didn't have a very linear career path. After my first job of college, I was laid off. I rode out the Great Recession doing retail because it was the only place that would hire me. And I've really found that like telling a student, you know, your journey doesn't have to be like, okay, A to B to C. It can start out at A and then move to the square and then go to number 12. And, you know, if you're, you know, it's great if you have a linear journey, but it's just as great if you figure out like what you want to do and don't want to do along the way. I really underscore to mentors the importance of active listening. So sitting in there, asking leading questions to your mentees instead of saying like, how are you? Be a little bit more specific about how is this particular class going? How is it going with that roommate thing you told me about? Because that makes students more open to sharing like longer answers and not just giving like, oh, I'm fine, or oh, the exam went well. Like, what does well mean for you? Kind of asking them more leading questions so you can get additional details. And if a student comes to you with an issue or wants to talk to you about something, you know, you listen to them, obviously, and then you kind of reiterate like, okay, I'm seeing that your issue is X. And that gives the student a chance to go back and say like, yes, that's exactly the issue, or no, it's kind of more like this. And then kind of following up as the mentor saying, like, okay, I'm happy to help you through this, or you can just kind of vent to me. I think as mentors, especially like the folks I work with as mentors are all in their professional careers, and we all work with college students. So we really want to fix things and jump into fix-it mode right away. And sometimes students aren't ready for that. They just need to like get it all out there and vent, and that's totally fine. So giving them that space and then helping them, if they do want the advice, figuring out, okay, this is what I do, and then following up afterwards, a week later, a couple weeks later, to see how those things have gone. In terms of the first year, I talked a little bit about this, but really helping them to find what success looks like for them in college. What grades are they hoping to get? Are those grades realistic? You know, students come from very competitive high schools. They may be the top person in their class, and then all of a sudden they're in college, they get their first B, and then can send them into like a spiral of self-doubt. So just kind of talking through them about what success can look like for them in college. And also like finding a community for themselves. What did they want their time at college to look like? And then within the last year, again, this can start earlier, but really encouraging students to connect with those career resources, with the folks who help them find placements at graduate schools, getting ready to get on-campus jobs. Working on campus is really important for students. A lot of our students are work study, and the research shows that students who work on campus, who have an on-campus job, do better academically than students who have an off-campus job, and then students who don't have a job on campus at all. As mentors, we have a professional network of our own. Some of us are new in our careers, some of us have been in higher ed a long time, some of us have moved from industry to higher ed. We have friends in the area. So we're able to say like, oh, you're interested in advertising? I know somebody who works at this company in advertising. Like, is it okay if I connect the two of you? So really building upon our own professional networks to help out our mentees and set them up for success in the long run. And I also like to remind students, especially like that senior year when they're just like, oh, I'm so stressed about finding a job. I don't know what to do. If they're going straight into the workforce from undergraduate, they won't have to deal with homework. You know, their post 9 to 5 time will be their own. And so they can really focus on other things in their life, self-care, finding a hobby. So just kind of like that light at the end of that senior year dark tunnel is really important to remind them of.
Thanks so much for those awesome recommendations. And I totally agree that looking on the bright side can be really motivational, especially in that last year, the final stretch. I know during my last year of high school, I was like, still 4 more years of college. So it was dampened down a little bit, but now this is like finally the light at the end of the tunnel, like directly into the workforce. So thanks for those. And now I will pass it on to Kendall.
Yes, so awesome work, everyone. We just had one more question, and I'm going to direct this towards Debbie and Zainab again. And that is, what is one challenge you faced while mentoring a young person? Please share how you navigated the challenge to continue maintaining a healthy relationship during a transition.
Zainab, you want to go first?
You can go, Debbie, if you'd like.
Okay, I will. First of all, I want to say, gosh, how much I loved the information that Claire gave, particularly with respect to her nonlinear journey and asking the leading questions. And my mentee is going into her junior year of high school. So I may want to stay connected with you, Claire, at some point and pick your brain. My continued challenge with my mentee is that she has a very, very private nature and is often not forthcoming, but tends to test the waters with me. She has a good relationship with her mom, a good solid relationship with her mom. So I'm really grateful for that. And I'm always encouraging her to continue communication with her mom about any kind of crisis. In this, I think her mom has come to trust me. When she thought she might be pregnant, her mom reacted angrily at first. You know, a mom is a mom is a mom, and which is why I think it's important to have safe adults in teenagers' lives that aren't family. And so initially she really didn't want to talk to her daughter. And my mentee went to stay with her grandmother for a week or two. I immediately picked up several pregnancy tests, brought them to her, telling her, you know, to take one that day. And if it's negative, wait 2 weeks, take the next one to be sure. And I shared with her how scary it was for my daughter to tell me when she was pregnant, when she was 16. I now have a fabulous 26-year-old granddaughter from that experience. But for my daughter back then, it was her fear of disappointing me. And my mentee felt the same way with her mom. I continue to encourage her to keep those lines of communication open. And I would say this experience really solidified our relationship. And we talk easily about intimacy each time she has a new boyfriend. She realized she was too young for such an involvement. And we discuss how emotional maturity needs to be a part of intimacy, and that only comes with age and life experience. But again, I strongly believe that the best way to maintain a healthy relationship is, first of all, in showing up. It's important to show up. We do lunches, we text back and forth all the time, we call on the phone. She was over here last week and spent the night, and we played in my art studio all day. Honesty is very important. Acceptance and lots of open communication. Youth Youth need to know the mentor is a safe place for them to go and that they are accepted as a valuable person exactly as they are, and they won't be judged or abandoned. Developing that bond, I think, at an early age will only strengthen the journey after high school as they travel whatever path that works best for them.
I think, you know, that's a mic drop, Debbie, for sure. Like, I agree with you. One of the challenges I think I face with my students in general is like, sometimes they'll just stop talking to me. I'll be texting them and then, you know, something happens or nothing happens or everything seems like it's going well and they'll just kind of fall off the face of the earth. And I'm like, okay. And I continue to text them, hey, just checking in, see how you're doing, send them an email. Give them a call. And I think to your point, Debbie, like young people and the youth we mentor, like they do really need to know that they can turn back to us even after a semester of ghosting us, right? Or leaving us on red. And so just knowing that we are here, even if they get let go from a job or if they're having life problems, and knowing that we are always going to be invested in their success academically, career-wise, and as a whole person, right? And they are the leaders of our future. And so like one semester not talking to me like is not going to deter me away. I will keep texting you, and you know, that's kind of just the work that we do.
Yeah, thank you so much, Debbie and Zainab. And also just the reminder, it's so important to be very raw and real when we have these conversations, because not everyone's life is cookie cutter, like Clara was talking about earlier. And it's important to be open to all of those conversations that might be, you know, not super polished or might be a little uncomfortable. So thank you both. And I'm going to transition it over to Rachel. I don't know if we have time for questions or we might be closing out. But thank you.
Yeah, we have a little bit of time to answer some questions that you all have put in the Q&A chat. So our first question, maybe Claire could answer this. Do you have recommendations for how to help a mentee build a connection with someone on campus who can support them while they're there before they get there?
Yes, so this is a wonderful question. So thank you to the member of the audience who suggested it. There are so many college campuses and so many resources that it can seem very overwhelming to a student to be like, who do I even talk to about these things? Especially for a residential campus, so somewhere that students live at the campus. Their resident advisor or RA is a wonderful resource, especially because they're very near in age. So the student can see them, you know, in addition to them being a mentor, they can also be seen as kind of a friend, somebody who's at the same institution, taking the same classes, eating in the same dining halls, and they'll have a lot of advice. And they're also specifically trained to start helping students figure out, okay, where do I go for with what questions? Another really important resource is the student's academic advisor. So the person who they go to select classes, to talk about their academic pathway. Because the academic advisor can say, okay, well, if you do this major, these are the options for you for careers. These are the options for you if you're interested in studying abroad. These are the places you can go. These are the professors you might want to work with the most closely, so they can kind of help make those connections when the student is thinking about their academic life. And then if a student has a particular interest in an extracurricular activity or becoming involved on campus, taking a leadership role, or, you know, maybe they want to find an identity group that's similar to them. So making sure that the student kind of does their research, and you can do that with them beforehand and see, okay, these are the people I want to connect with at the LGBTQ center, or these are the people I want to connect with if there's a Black student center or a Latina student center. So that the students can really hit the ground running and start building that community and their own network on campus.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that answer. If maybe we could get this one last question, maybe a word or two from each of the panelists. What is a key qualification of a mentor? Like what if someone doesn't feel qualified to be a mentor? How can you encourage them and kind of enable them to share their experience and share what qualifies someone to be a good mentor?
I'm gonna just say be yourself, right? And you have life experiences, you're living, you're qualified to be a mentor.
I have to agree with Santa on that as well. Be authentic. I think that's the most important part. Be authentic, but also you have to come at mentoring from a space where you're not there to change another person. You're not there necessarily to. It's not your responsibility to make a young person be who you think they should be. They need to be their best self. And so reserving personal judgments is very, very important, and showing them how well they're accepted, while at the same time guiding them towards a healthier alternative as a possibility. A lot of these kids that need mentors are coming from disadvantaged homes, broken homes, have histories that are difficult to be able to grasp. So the trust is essential in situations like that. Establishing trust and establishing acceptance, or they're not going to listen to much of what you have to say. So.
I agree with both Zainab and Debbie, and I would just add, making sure that you as a mentor, or the folks that you're trying to get to mentor, have a good deal of empathy and a good deal of the ability to self-reflect. Understand that you have your own story as a mentor, and your mentee is going to have their own story, and just knowing where you can make those connections between your story and the mentee's story, and where you can't. And just understanding that, that is something that you're going to need to acknowledge with your mentee early on.
That's awesome. Thank you all so much for joining us today and for your really insightful answers. It was really awesome. As a reminder for everyone, before you leave, don't forget, you can always reach out to Youth Mentoring, National Mentoring Resource Center for no-cost technical assistance for you and your mentoring program. These slides will also be sent out via email within a week, and you'll be able to click the link and do that request. We provide support on everything from program development to building mentoring programs to refining programs. So feel free to access the NMRC website for key resources. Thank you all so much for joining us.